Hello, shooters. My name is James Towle, and you're watching the American Trigger Sports Network, your station for live news. On this week's show, the king of armed American radio himself, Mark Walters, live in the studio along with Barbara Crown, publisher of the Hunting Report, the most authoritative report on hunting around the world, as well as live in the studio, Mr. David Codrea, author of War on Guns, Notes from the Resistance. Welcome all. Listen, Mark, you sent that call about the 911.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
not sure exactly where it took place, but that was an amazing call.
Yeah, it was very unusual. That actually occurred just outside of Orlando, Florida. Fascinating clip because we have an individual who actually heard the noise 2:30 in the morning, went downstairs to investigate. We can argue and debate that all day long.
It was a female.
It was a female.
Okay,
she was
it's a
apparently
woman.
home alone.
She's alone in the home
Alone
by
in the
herself.
home, right.
She hears someone or something in the garage.
Her alarm went off.
Her alarm
she went
went off,
downstairs
okay.
to investigate, found nothing, went back upstairs. The alarm went off a second time. About 2:30 in the morning approximately, she goes back downstairs, finds two individuals. One of them takes off out of the garage, runs, disappears. The second individual she hauls into her living room and then made the 911 call.
Yeah, you know, I don't think you hear about it. I don't think hey, you're from Miami. Have you heard that a woman holding a guy at gunpoint in the middle of the night? Have you heard of that before?
I have heard of that.
You have?
I have not heard of her taking that kind of control of the situation. You
Right.
see, that to me is just taking control, going, you're not going anywhere. Right. You're coming where I can keep an eye on you. You can't get away.
The debate becomes at what point, if you look at some, again, preparation, avoidance, and awareness techniques, should she have confronted the bad guys in her home alone to begin with? That's one aspect of it. Should she have gone downstairs? We've seen so many times where the top trainers in the world will tell you to retreat to a safe room. Your objective is to stay safe and get out of the situation alive. Retreat to a safe room, contact 911, arm yourself, have a plan in your home in case something like that happens.
Right.
Now, as you know from law enforcement background, one of the most dangerous things a law enforcement officer can do is clear a home. And they're trained, highly trained. And here we have an armed woman in her home in the middle of the night doing something very dangerous.
Here's the thing that concerns me about this situation, Mark, and that is I've, first of all, never heard of this from a trainer's point of view, to go ahead and bring the perp back into your home.
Right.
I would be wondering from a civil litigation point of view, if she brings the guy back in her home and then decides that some further defensive measure involving shooting him is necessary, what kind of civil liability is she setting herself up for? But then playing devil's advocate, the other thing that I would think about is if they're truly dangerous people, we also have a duty or a responsibility if you just let them go and it turns out that they hurt somebody down the street.
If they come back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They know the weakness now in your home.
Sure.
And they know you're armed.
Right.
They're going to come back,
Right.
and this time they're going to be ready for you.
Right.
You have that down.
There's a lot going on in this scenario, but I want you to think about this. I want you to imagine your own home alarm going off at 2:30 in the morning and envision what are you going to do. Now, I have small children in the home. My reaction is going to be to keep my children safe, certainly not maybe inject myself into a situation. There's a lot happening. We have to look at the layout of the home, where the children are, do you have a safe room in the home, for example, is something else to analyze. Apparently, in this case, she did not. Apparently, she was home by herself. But you're right, David, to bring the perp back into the home. Civil liability, now we get into the states that have stand your ground laws. She's in her own home.
Let's first give her credit.
Great credit.
Okay,
yeah, after it's all said and done.
Good for her, yay.
Right.
And like
Chalk it
you
up
were
for a good
saying,
guy.
she took this thing on, not knowing what was in there, went down with a gun. I don't know whether she lit him up with a garage light or whether she lit him up with something on her weapon, but she lit him up and one ran and she brought him into her home and held him at gunpoint. Hey, how many times do you think they're going to come back to that house? I don't think so.
The second individual was eventually caught, too. The individual that fled was eventually caught.
Was he?
It worked out very well. She's very fortunate. It could have turned out entirely differently.
Show us the call.
I need a police officer. I've got a home invader. Do you know who this person is? I do not. There were two in my garage. One guy ran out the side door, and the other's standing here in my living room. He's in your living room right now? He's right here.
Despite 2 burglars barging into her home in the middle of the night, Rebecca Bruce sounds calm, cool, and collected while calling 911.
What's he doing? He's standing here. Are you holding him at gunpoint or something? I am.
Rebecca told me she woke up to her alarm around 2:30 this morning. Too tired to put her face on camera tonight, she told me how she grabbed her gun to check things out, but didn't find anything and then went back to bed.
No, you don't really think that you're going to come out and really find intruders in your, whether it's your garage or your home. You think it's just a false alarm.
Well, the alarm sounded again, and this time she thought to check the garage. She found these 2 guys rifling through her car.
I heard him going, please don't shoot me.
She forced Blake Rodriguez into her home at gunpoint.
I said, you come over here, go ahead of me, and if you try anything, I will shoot you. And so we walked into the house,
holding him there until officers arrived. Austin Garrison Free is the one who took off running out this side door and through her backyard. He was caught on the street just behind her home. Are you thankful tonight, or are you relieved?
Oh, I'm probably thankful, relieved, and thinking, wow, you know, this could have ended very differently.
There's, like I said, there's an awful lot going on in here. I think the line that sticks out me more than anything is she forced him back into the home at gunpoint. She forced him back into her home at gunpoint.
Yeah, well, I kind of take that as you come in, you come in.
She was in the garage. She brought him back into the living room. There was just something very odd, strange sounding about bringing the perpetrator back into the home. But she did it. You heard the tape, how calm she was, almost forcing the 911 operator to coax what was happening out of her. And she made the comment, Barbara, that obviously this kind of stuff happens in Miami on a regular, but home invasion is a common crime.
It's a big city. We do have crime. I won't say that it's something that we see on the news every night, but yeah, home invasions occur in Miami.
It's on the uptick. There's no doubt about it. More home invasions are happening. It is on the uptick.
We have more and more instances of shop owners and homeowners defending their homes and their businesses at gunpoint.
Yeah.
Now, I had not seen that clip, and I was assuming forced him into the home, meaning that he's out in the yard somewhere. To me, if someone's in my garage, they're in my home. There's a little door that's right there.
That is part of your home.
And, I may need to be able to control the situation better in a different area. But Mark, you brought up a point earlier before the clip, and that was to have a plan and to anticipate and know. We all know where we live, we all know what our layout is, and we all know who else is in the house with us in terms of family members. And this is something that I would submit, if you're going to have a firearm and you're going to consider armed defense as one of your options, that you have a responsibility to go through a scenario like that.
You absolutely do. You have to pre-plan for this back in the back of your mind. What am I going to do if?
You don't want it to be a surprise.
We have fire training.
I think she did.
She did. She obviously
had a plan.
She had a plan. She had a gun. Obviously, she was prepared. Now, again, we've mentioned this before. The gun is not the magic sword. It's not going to stop an action against her. We don't know what kind of action. He could have jumped her in the living room. She had a firearm. I don't know what type of training that she had, what her background with that firearm may be or may not be. But the fact of the matter is that depending on the layout, you know your home, as you mentioned, you know what's valuable, you know where your children are, and you know what your main objective is. Your main objective is to survive the encounter, period. Whatever you need to do to survive that encounter. If that means to run away, run away. There's nothing in your home, if you're home by yourself, that's worth your life.
Hey, she could have just called the cops and said, I hear a noise in the garage.
She could very well have done that.
She could have locked the door and sat there on the couch and waited.
She could have very well have done that. In fact, some of the top experts in the world will say that she should have retreated to a safe room where she had a firearm and waited with 911, had a cell phone and a firearm, waited on the phone with law enforcement until they were able to come in and professionally clear the house.
But
that, I think, would be but she didn't.
Why?
I don't have the answer to that, but she had a plan. I'm going to chalk it up for the good guys.
She had the wherewithal to carry through with the plan.
You did hear her say you don't really think that you're going to come down and find someone in your home. She did not think that she was going to, this isn't really happening to me. And it did. And it did. And she's very lucky that she had the firearm because she really wasn't expecting it, I don't think.
Well,
and she made that
I don't think most people think they're going to get burgled in the middle of the night.
No, and they certainly don't think
even though we have a plan for it, I don't think we ever think it's really going to happen. But, hey, I got to give her a lot of credit.
Hats off.
And I'm going to have to look down here and find her name again. But I'm going to have to give her a lot of credit for having the wherewithal to go forth with that. I mean, Barbara, I know that you've had some firearms training. Would you be that confident?
I have gotten up in the middle of the night with my .45 and cleared my house.
45.
Yes.
Okay, way go, Barbara. I didn't know that.
I want something that's going to stop them and knock them on their butt.
Hey! Here, 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 here.
That will do it.
You had a 45. Hey, you're beginning to scare me. What do you have for home defense?
I never discuss my firearms publicly.
Okay, well, it's only between you and I.
That's true, and these good folks here.
But you have home defense.
You bet I do.
Okay, all right, all right. Well, that leaves that. Hey, listen, we'll be right back with some more of this. We're going to talk to David about the hypocrisy of gun control, because this is a subject that David brings up on the show many times. So give me some examples.
Well, James, I think that one of the things that sticks in the craw of my readers more than just about anything else is when you see a politician who's been instrumental in bringing citizen disarmament laws and getting them enacted, and yet they turn around and they either have a permit that they use in a hard-to-get may-issue state, and or they have taxpayer-funded armed bodyguards. So we see instances like Mayor Bloomberg is a key example, I think, of New York City. You can't find really a bigger enemy of the right of the people to keep and bear arms, and yet he goes to Bermuda with his armed retinue of security paid for by the taxpayers of New York City, and yet in Bermuda, most cops don't even carry. And yet Mayor Bloomberg, by virtue of the fact that he's his nibs, can go down there and he can have...
He is a mayor.
He is a mayor.
He's a mayor. He probably has, what, the third or fourth biggest income-producing city in the world. I mean, he's probably made a couple of enemies over the years. Do you blame him for?
I don't entitle. I don't give him. I don't take anything away from him wanting to have security.
I don't blame him.
Nor would I do that to Mayor Daley either in Chicago. As much as I can't stand Mayor Daley's politics, he is the mayor. There are threats against him as a politician, and I understand it. However, what this smacks of is elitism, and what's good for the goose is not good for the gander. That somehow he and Rosie O'Donnell's children are more important and special than my children. When they do not allow me as a citizen of the city or the state or wherever it is, they want to hold back my freedoms and my rights, and you write about this all day. You know.
So there's no exemptions. There's no exceptions to the law.
I don't know. Are there exceptions to the law from when you're talking about someone like Mayor Bloomberg and mayors against illegal guns, for example?
Well, yeah, I'm not trying to defend the guy. I mean, we all know I'm not any more happy with some of his policies than anybody else is on our side. But you know, I'm thinking there are some special circumstances.
I don't begrudge anyone the ability to provide for themselves security at whatever appropriate level they think they need, but the key word here is anyone. Now, I can't afford an armed bodyguard because I'm not Mark. I don't have a nationally successful radio show to have an armed retinue and to be able to afford it like he can.
Oh, I wish. I wish I could. You see, like what you're talking about.
You know what I'm saying.
I absolutely do. I have to protect myself, of course, and I have the right to protect myself.
And your family.
And it is not up to Mayor Bloomberg to stop me and take my freedoms and my rights to defend myself.
All right. Now I see where you're going with it.
Exactly right.
Now I got it.
It's a question of why does he have the right to this kind of protection, but he won't give us the right to this kind of protection.
Okay.
Now listen to what you just said. You said he won't give us the right. He won't give us the right. This is the elitism that we're talking about. This is what smacks of elitism.
Isn't that called the Second Amendment?
Yeah.
The Second Amendment is not a right granted to us by Mayor Bloomberg.
Not granted. By God, I've been beat up over granted.
Yeah.
Not granted.
From my readers, by the way.
I know. Yes, it's not granted. Don't use that word, please. But go ahead.
It's a right that's recognized in the Bill of Rights in our Constitution, and David knows more than anybody about this topic. That is recognized. It's not granted by a local politician. It's not granted by any politician. It's granted by our Creator that we have a right to defend life, liberty, and our own pursuit of happiness.
Okay, so what we're talking about here is that if you live in New York City, you should be able to protect yourself just like the mayor.
We talked about not just like the mayor to where you can take a retinue to Bermuda with you, for goodness sakes, but we're talking about something so simple as having a firearm in your home, which the recent Heller and McDonald decisions finally at least gave some legal recognition to that, because James, earlier we were talking about Barbara having to clear her house with a .45. Okay, if this had been Chicago, Barbara would have been on her own, possibly having to grab the 9-iron and go against some savage who has twice her body strength.
Now let's clarify for the viewers that the Heller. Well, I think we should clarify for viewers what the Heller and the McDonald decision were. 2008 Heller decision overturned Washington D.C.'s gun bans as unconstitutional. Subsequent to that, in 2010, the McDonald decision, Otis McDonald filed suit against the city of Chicago and Mayor Daley. The Supreme Court accepted that case and overturned Chicago's gun ban as unconstitutional.
Anybody not know that? Raise your hand.
Now we have some precedent here, but those were 5-4 decisions, James, as you know.
Very close.
Very, very dangerous. We are one vote away on the Supreme Court, literally, from overturning the Second Amendment, or I don't say overturn the Second Amendment, but challenging the Second Amendment at our federal court level, at our Supreme Court. It's a very dangerous precedent that we're that close that an ideologically divided court.
Okay, let me ask this question. Are there not permits granted to certain individuals in New York City?
Absolutely.
Okay, now, does that reinforce the argument for or against?
Well, when you consider that the permits to carry are quite different from the permits to possess, and the permits to carry go to people with names like Donald Trump, and people with names like Harvey Keitel, and people with names like Robert De Niro. They don't particularly go to people with names like David Codrea or people with names like James Towle.
Wait a minute, you don't know I don't have a permit.
Oh, that's true. I don't know that you have a permit. So
no, but you know what they'll do.
I know that I don't.
You know what they'll do, and this is what angers me, is the city of New York will take your $357 application, they will take your $95 fee, they will keep every bit of it and rubber stamp a big fat no on it, and they've got your money, yet you don't deserve, in their eyes, the right to defend your life. Yet you'll pay to apply, and it is non-refundable.
Just for those of us who may not live in Miami, may not know the law, is it a shall issue state?
We have the right to carry. I have a concealed weapons permit. You can have a firearm in your vehicle. You can protect your home with a firearm. You can protect your business with a firearm. If someone has entered your home, you have the right to protect your life using lethal force. I'm fortunate to live in a state that is that pro-gun, and we have a lot of people in our state that are trying to change that. But we'll keep fighting that.
You're right. Florida, the gunshine state, which I happily refer to it as, was at the forefront of the laws that we now know as right-to-carry laws back in 1987. It was the state of Florida that enacted the first right-to-carry law that we know today that then steamrolled across the country. I would have never thought that I would be sitting here saying this, that Florida's gun rights are literally under attack right now by anti-gun extremists in local municipalities, in predominantly the West Palm Beach area right now, who are suing the state because they have been in violation of the state preemption laws for 25 years. Florida's preemption laws that the state is the one that...
I think we're getting lost in here.
The state makes the gun laws. Right. And the state says that local municipalities cannot make law that would override state gun laws.
This is in conflict with the state, right.
The states have been violating the Florida preemption laws for 25 years. So the Florida legislature this past year passed SB 234, signed it into law, and gave the state preemption laws teeth, where they would actually fine and penalize to the extent of hundreds of $5,000 up to $100,000 fine and a loss of a local municipality politician's job if they were found to be in violation of the state preemption laws. West Palm Beach is currently suing the state of Florida right now, as we sit here, for the right to violate the law because they don't like the fact that they have to to follow the law. And that stemmed from the fact that they want local control of the right to be able to disarm you in a city park, which they've had signs up in West Palm Beach and Lee County and Fort Myers for years.
Is this where that councilwoman or something came out and said no guns in the building?
Yes.
Wasn't that West Palm?
With Shelley Van. And what she did was she's fighting for the right to say, or for the right, she's fighting for the ability of the city of West Palm Beach to limit, or the county, guns in parks, for example, in a city park. Well, state preemption law, state law says it's okay. They've been violating that for 25 years. Now they're suing the state so that they can, in turn, continue to violate the law. It is the most convoluted thing you've ever seen.
And this, as we're talking about hypocrisy, is another area where it's illustrated by the anti-gunners, because they're saying the state is mandating this and it's taking away from our home rule, is the term that they like to use. And yet, whenever they pass these national mandates, they want a national quote-unquote assault weapons ban or a national close the gun show loophole, the gun show pinhole ban. They never seem to revert back to home rule. So they want home rule when it suits them and when it suits their agenda. When it does not, they want central bureaucrat diktat.
Yeah, they claim that this is a local issue and that they should have the right because they know what's best for, and I quote, their people. What kind of world are we living in that I am the local council's people?
What's going on in Atlanta, Georgia? What's there?
I never would have thought that I would have said this, but I've watched Georgia's gun laws transform to be better than Florida's over the course of the last 2 to 3 years. Georgia's gun laws, believe it or not, we have.
Well, it's a big gun state.
It is a big gun state, but it
should
suffered from Jim Crow laws. We suffered from the public gathering laws that date back 140 years in the state of Georgia that eliminated, even with a right to carry permit, the right to carry a gun in a quote-unquote public gathering. It defined public gathering to me. As a McDonald's a public gathering, it would depend on the individual law enforcement officer, and a lot of good people found themselves in trouble. Those laws have been overturned. The weapons license in Georgia, like Florida's, is now a concealed weapons license, not a pistol permit. And it's not just concealed, it's a weapons license. So I can carry openly, I can carry concealed, I have the right to do that. In Florida, you can't do that, for example.
Okay, you can carry openly a pistol.
With a permit.
With a permit.
Right.
Okay. Okay, shooters, we're out of time. I want to thank David, I want to thank Mark, and I want to thank Barbara. We appreciate the input. I know that the viewers have enjoyed the show, and I'm sure that I have enjoyed the show. See you again next week.